Welcome to Quiet Echoes in a Ceramic Mug, a deeply calming sleep story designed to gently guide you into restful slumber. If you find peace and comfort in our time together tonight, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more soothing audio experiences. Before we join Arthur Finch in his peaceful riverside cottage, we will begin with a short, gentle breathing guidance to help release the tensions of the day. If you prefer to drift straight into the story, you can find timestamps for each chapter in the description below, allowing you to navigate directly to the gentle sounds of Arthur preparing his morning tea beside the misty river. Please, find a position that feels truly comfortable for you right now. Allow your body to settle, feeling the support beneath you, whether it's your mattress, your pillows, or a favorite chair. Gently adjust your blankets, letting yourself be enveloped in a sense of cozy security. This is your time of quiet space, carved out just for you, away from the demands and noises of the day. Let the quiet atmosphere of Arthur's cottage begin to surround you, a place where simple routines and the gentle presence of the river bring profound peace. Now, let's take a slow, calming breath together. Inhale gently through your nose, feeling the air fill your lungs easily, without effort. And as you exhale softly through your mouth, imagine you are releasing a quiet sigh, letting go of any tightness or worry. Feel the warmth, perhaps, like the comforting heat radiating from Arthur's ceramic mug held between his hands. With each slow inhale, draw in calm. With each gentle exhale, release the day. Picture the soft steam rising from the tea, mirroring the gentle rise and fall of your own quiet breath. Feel your shoulders soften, your jaw relax. If thoughts drift into your mind, acknowledge them gently, like leaves floating slowly down the river. Arthur watches, and then gently bring your awareness back to the sensation of your breath or the sound of my voice. There is nothing else you need to do right now but rest, listen, and allow. Feel the steady, peaceful rhythm of Arthur's quiet world begin to infuse your own sense of calm. Let the gentle lapping of the river wash away distractions, and the quiet focus of his craft soothe your mind. Allow yourself to sink deeper into relaxation, feeling heavier, warmer, more at ease with each passing moment. Now, let us step quietly into Arthur's world, beginning with the gentle sounds of his morning ritual. Chapter 1, The Morning Ritual and the River Mist. The old cottage stood silent in the pre-dawn gray, wrapped in a stillness that felt ancient and deep. Inside, Arthur Finch stirred gently, not jolted awake, but rather emerging softly from sleep like a boat drifting towards a quiet shore. The wooden floorboards felt cool beneath his bare feet as he padded softly from his small bedroom into the main room, the space that served as both living area and workshop. A faint, pearly light was just beginning to filter through the large, multi-paned window that overlooked the river oak. He moved with quiet intention, his actions part of a ritual so familiar it required little thought, only gentle presence. First, the small electric kettle. He filled it with fresh, cold water from the tap, the sound a low gurgle in the quiet room. Placing it on its base, he pressed the switch, rewarded by the soft, reassuring click and the immediate low hum that signaled the beginning of warmth. In the silence, the hum seemed almost companionable, a gentle awakening sound. While the water heated, Arthur selected his tea. This morning, it would be Earl Grey, He opened the small tin caddy, inhaling the fragrant aroma of bergamot, a scent like sunshine trapped in dried leaves. He measured a careful spoonful into his small brown earthenware teapot, the tiny leaves rattling softly against the ceramic. Soon, the kettle reached its boil, clicking off with another gentle sound. He lifted it, pouring the steaming water over the leaves, watching them swirl and begin to unfurl. The rising steam carried the bergamot scent more fully into the air. He placed the lid on the pot and covered it with a thick navy blue knitted cozy, trapping the warmth within. Now he waited. These few minutes of steeping were a pause, a quiet interlude between waking and the day truly beginning. He drew his favorite armchair closer to the large window, settling into its familiar worn cushions. The fabric was soft corduroy, faded by time and sunlight, welcoming him like an old friend. He let his body sink into the chair, feeling the support beneath him, allowing his shoulders to release any lingering tension from the night. Outside, the river was still shrouded in mist, a soft, moving blanket of white that obscured the opposite bank entirely. Only the closest reeds were visible, dark silhouettes against the luminous gray. The tea timer, a small hourglass filled with dark sand, whispered its contents away. When the last grain fell, Arthur rose slowly. He retrieved his favorite mug, a sturdy ceramic one, glazed a deep forest green, slightly irregular in shape, fitting perfectly into his cupped hands. He poured the tea, a rich amber liquid, the fragrant steam rising to meet him. Carrying the mug carefully, he returned to his armchair by the window. He didn't sip immediately. First, he simply held the mug, letting the warmth seep into his palms, then travel up his arms, a comforting heat that seemed to loosen something deep inside. He watched the steam curl upwards, like gentle breaths made visible in the cool morning air. He took his own slow, deep breath, inhaling the mingled scent of tea and the damp river air filtering faintly through the window sills, and exhaled slowly, feeling a little more grounded, a little more present. Outside, the mist had begun to stir. Wisps detached themselves from the main body, drifting lazily upwards, revealing fleeting glimpses of the dark, slow-moving water beneath. There was no sound but the faintest murmur of the river, a constant, gentle presence in his life. He raised the mug to his lips, taking the first careful sip. The warmth spread downwards, a welcome sensation in the quiet chill of the morning. The flavor was familiar, comforting, a small, perfect anchor to start the day. He sat there for a long while, cradling the green mug, sipping his tea slowly, watching the river emerge piece by piece from its misty veil. The world outside was waking up, but here, inside his quiet cottage, time seemed to move more slowly, measured only by the cooling of his tea and the gradual brightening of the day. He felt the gentle weight of the mug in his hand, a solid grounding presence. In these quiet moments, holding his tea, watching the river, Arthur found a simple, profound peace, an echo of stillness resonating within the warm ceramic. Chapter 2. Binding Pages, Binding Thoughts. Later that morning, the mist having fully yielded to a soft, overcast sky, Arthur was settled at his large wooden workbench. Sunlight, diffused and gentle, slanted through the tall window, illuminating the small particles of dust dancing in the air and casting a calm glow over the tools of his trade. The air in the workshop held its own unique blend of scents, the dry, slightly sweet smell of old paper, the faint, almost sharp tang of PVA glue, the richness of leather oils, and underlying it all, the subtle aroma of wood polish from the aged bench itself. His current project was rebinding a collection of poetry, its original cover long since disintegrated. Laid out before him were the collated signatures, folded sections of creamy, smooth paper, their edges neatly aligned. His hands moved with a practiced economy, a quiet rhythm developed over years of dedication. He picked up his awl, its wooden handle worn smooth and dark from countless hours of use, feeling its familiar weight in his palm. With careful pressure, he punched small, precise holes along the spine of the first signature, the tool making a soft crunch as it pierced the paper. There was a meditative quality to the work, the repetition of actions aligning the next signature, punching the holes in exactly the same places, threading the long, waxed linen thread onto a curved needle settled his mind. His focus narrowed to the task at hand, the feel of the smooth paper, the tension of the thread as he pulled it taut, the satisfying way the signatures began to cohere into a solid text block. The only sounds were the gentle scrape of paper, the soft thump of his bone folder pressing creases flat, the occasional quiet snip as he cut the thread. Beside his elbow, nestled amongst rolls of book cloth and pots of glue, sat the forest green ceramic mug. The Earl Grey tea from breakfast was long gone, replaced now with a simple infusion of dried nettle leaves, its color a pale greenish gold. It was lukewarm now, but still offered comfort. Occasionally, Arthur would pause his work, leaning back slightly in his wooden chair, feeling the gentle stretch in his shoulders. He would reach for the mug, his fingers automatically finding their familiar places around its curve. Holding it, he would gaze out of the window for a moment. The river flowed slowly past, its surface ruffled by a gentle breeze. A moorhen paddled diligently near the opposite bank, leaving a widening V-shaped wake in the gray water. He took a slow sip of the mild tea, the warmth, though diminished, still pleasant. The brief pause, the familiar comfort of the mug, the quiet view, it was enough to reset his focus, to bring a fresh wave of calm diligence to his work. He returned to the text block, carefully applying a thin, even layer of glue to the spine, the brush making soft, whispering strokes. He laid a strip of reinforcing mull cloth over the glue, smoothing it down gently with his fingertips, feeling the slight tackiness. Each step was deliberate, unhurried. There was no rush here, only the quiet satisfaction of careful craftsmanship, of bringing something worn back to life, page by page, stitch by stitch. He picked up the next signature, aligning it perfectly. His breathing was slow and even, falling into rhythm with the gentle cadence of his work. The repetitive motions were soothing, grounding. Thoughts might drift in a memory of finding a particularly beautiful marbled end paper, the gentle greeting exchanged with Mrs. Gable over the fence earlier that morning, as she dead-headed roses, but they floated past gently, not disturbing the underlying quietude. His attention remained anchored in the tactile reality of the paper, the thread, the tools, the familiar weight of the mug nearby. Hours passed in this peaceful absorption. The light shifted subtly outside the window, the gray sky softening. Arthur worked on, stitch by careful stitch, pause by thoughtful sip. The text block grew, solid and promising under his hands. The quiet echoes weren't just in the ceramic mug, but in the rhythmic pulse of his work, in the silent conversation between craftsman and material, a steady, peaceful hum beneath the surface of the ordinary day. Chapter 3. A slow walk where the reeds whisper. The afternoon light had begun to wane slightly when Arthur felt the need to stretch, to breathe air that wasn't tinged with the scent of paper and glue. He carefully cleaned his brushes, wiped down his workbench, and left the newly glued spine of the poetry book resting under a heavy press. He pulled on a soft, well-worn woolen cardigan, its familiar weight a gentle comfort on his shoulders, and stepped out of the cottage door. The air outside was cool and carried the damp, earthy scent of the riverbank. He turned onto the narrow path that followed the curve of the river oak, his footsteps making soft, crunching sounds on the fine gravel mixed with fallen leaves. The pace he set was slow, unhurried, allowing him to simply observe, to absorb the quiet atmosphere of the riverside. The sky remained overcast, a soft, uniform gray that muted the colors of the landscape, lending everything a peaceful, gentle quality. To his left, the river flowed sluggishly, its surface like pewter, disturbed only by the occasional ripple from the breeze or the V-shaped wake of a distant waterfowl. To his right, tall reeds and grasses grew thick, their dry heads rustling and whispering secrets to the wind. The sound was a constant, soft shushing, a natural lullaby that seemed to absorb the silence rather than break it. He listened to the subtle variations in the sound, the way it rose and fell with the strength of the breeze. He paused beneath a large weeping willow, its long fronds trailing almost to the water's surface. He watched the way the gentle wind lifted the thin leaves, making them dance like green ribbons. A small robin landed briefly on a low branch, its head cocked, observing him with bright, curious eyes before flitting away into the dense undergrowth. Arthur simply watched, feeling a quiet connection to the small lives unfolding around him, unnoticed by most. His hands were clasped loosely behind his back as he walked, his gaze drifting from the water to the path ahead, to the intricate patterns of bark on an old oak tree leaning precariously over the bank. He noticed the small details, a cluster of bright red berries on a holly bush, the delicate structure of a spider's web strung between two tall stalks of grass, glistening with invisible droplets of moisture, the smooth gray surface of a stone worn round by years in the river's flow. He walked perhaps half a mile downstream, then turned slowly and began the equally unhurried journey back. The coolness of the air felt pleasant on his cheeks and in his lungs. He felt the gentle weight of his feet connecting with the earth path, a grounding sensation. There was no destination in mind, only the walk itself, the quiet observation, the simple act of being present in the gentle landscape. Returning to the cottage, he felt refreshed, his mind clearer, his body looser. The first thing he did upon stepping back inside was to fill the kettle once more. The familiar click echoed softly in the quiet room. This time, he chose a simple black tea, robust and warming. As the tea steeped, he stood by the window again, looking out at the same river view, but seeing it slightly differently now after having walked beside it. He poured the steaming tea into his forest green mug, the ceramic already feeling familiar and comforting after the coolness outside. He wrapped his hands around it, letting the warmth penetrate deep into his fingers, which felt slightly chilled from the walk. He sank back into his armchair, the deep cushions sighing softly under his weight. He took a slow, appreciative sip of the hot tea, feeling the warmth spread through him, a welcome counterpoint to the lingering coolness of the outdoors. The simple ritual, the familiar mug, the quiet view, it felt like coming home, even though he'd only been gone a short while. Chapter 4. Rainy Day, Comforts and Chamomile Steam. The rain began softly, almost hesitantly, just after lunch. At first, it was just a few scattered drops tapping gently against the large workshop window, like shy fingers seeking entry. Then, it settled into a steady, quiet rhythm, a persistent patter, patter, patter on the slate roof tiles, and a soft, rhythmic drumming against the glass panes. Arthur, who had been contemplating starting the cover construction for the poetry book, found his resolve gently washed away by the soothing sound. Some days were simply made for pausing. He decided to embrace the cozy atmosphere the rain created. He tidied away his bookbinding tools, leaving the workbench clear, except for a small stack of books he intended to sort later. He went to the small kitchen alcove and put the kettle on again, the familiar click cutting softly through the sound of the rain. This time, he reached for a tin of dried chamomile flowers, their delicate apple-like scent released as he spooned them into his earthenware pot. The rain seemed to invite a gentler brew. While the chamomile steeped under its navy blue cozy, Arthur selected a book from his shelves, not the poetry book he was rebinding, but an old favorite, a collection of essays on nature he hadn't opened in years. He settled himself deep into his worn corduroy armchair, adjusting the cushions until he felt perfectly supported. He switched on the old brass reading lamp beside the chair, its soft, warm glow creating a cozy island of light in the room as the gray, rainy daylight outside began to fade prematurely. He poured the pale golden chamomile tea into his green ceramic mug, the steam rising in fragrant clouds. The scent filled the small space around his chair, mingling pleasantly with the clean, earthy smell of the rain outside and the faint, ever-present aroma of old paper from the bookshelves lining the walls. He took a moment just to inhale, letting the gentle fragrance calm his senses. Then he wrapped his hands around the warm mug, feeling the familiar smooth curve, the comforting heat soaking into his skin. He opened the book, the pages slightly stiff, whispering softly as he turned them. The rain continued its gentle percussion on the roof and window, a constant lulling backdrop. Occasionally, a gust of wind would press a sheet of rain more firmly against the glass, creating a brief whoosh before settling back into the steady patter. Arthur read slowly, his eyes following the lines of print, but his mind often drifted, lulled by the sounds and the warmth. He would pause his reading, lowering the book to his lap, and simply listen to the rain. He watched the rivulets chasing each other down the windowpane, distorting the view of the river and the trees beyond into impressionistic watercolors of gray and green. He sipped his chamomile tea, the warmth spreading through his chest, feeling utterly peaceful, cocooned in his small haven of quiet comfort. The warmth of the mug felt like a solid anchor in the soft gray afternoon. There was a profound sense of shelter, of being safely indoors while the world outside received its gentle washing. The rhythmic drumming of the rain seemed to slow his own inner rhythms, encouraging a state of deep relaxation. He felt the weight of his body sinking comfortably into the armchair, the soft fabric supporting him completely. He let his shoulders drop, released any unconscious tension in his jaw, and simply allowed himself to be present in the peaceful moment. Thoughts drifted through his mind like the raindrops on the window, fleeting images, snippets of memory, quiet observations. but he let them come and go without holding on to them. The focus remained on the simple sensations, the warmth of the mug, the soft light, the gentle scent of chamomile, the lulling sound of the rain. It was a perfect afternoon for quiet contemplation, for letting the gentle rhythm of nature outside seep into his own being, washing away any lingering stresses of the week, leaving only a quiet sense of contentment. Chapter 5. Evening Stillness under Starlight. The rain had stopped sometime during the late afternoon, leaving behind a world washed clean and glistening. As evening drew in, the sky cleared and a deep velvet blue began to settle over the river valley. Arthur had finished his simple supper soup and crusty bread, eaten at the small table near the window, and had washed the few dishes, the clinking of pottery soft in the quiet cottage. Now he prepared his final cup of tea for the day. He chose peppermint this time, the clean, bright scent, a refreshing counterpoint to the richness of the chamomile earlier. He filled the kettle one last time, the familiar click sounding perhaps a little louder now in the deeper stillness of the evening. As the water heated, he stood for a moment at the open back door, breathing in the cool, damp air. It smelled of wet earth, decaying leaves, and the clean scent rising from the river. The sounds were minimal, the distant hoot of an owl, the gentle murmur of the river, now seeming closer in the absence of daytime noises. Once the peppermint tea was steeping, fragrant steam curling from the spout of the pot, Arthur returned to his armchair by the window. He didn't switch on the reading lamp this time, preferring to let the natural twilight fill the room. The shapes of the furniture were softened, indistinct, creating a peaceful womb-like atmosphere. He poured the pale tea into his green ceramic mug, the ritual comforting in its familiarity. He settled back into the chair, cradling the mug. Its warmth was welcome, though the room itself wasn't cold. He held it loosely, feeling the heat lessened slightly with each passing minute. Outside, the sky was deepening rapidly towards black, and the first stars were beginning to prick through the fading blue. He watched them emerge, one by one, faint at first, then growing brighter, colder, more distinct against the darkening canvas. The cottage was quiet now, save for the occasional soft creak of the old wooden structure settling around him, a sound like a gentle sigh. The river's murmur was a constant low thrum beneath the silence. Arthur sipped his peppermint tea, the clean taste refreshing on his palate. He wasn't thinking about anything in particular, simply observing the transition from day to night, feeling the quiet rhythm of his own small world align with the large rhythms outside. He noticed the reflections of the newly emerged stars beginning to shimmer on the dark, glassy surface of the river. It looked like scattered diamonds on black velvet. He followed the slow drift of the current with his eyes, feeling his own thoughts slow down, becoming as peaceful and unhurried as the water's flow. The mug in his hands was cooler now, the heat having mostly dissipated, leaving just the smooth, solid feel of the ceramic. He finished the tea, the last sip cool, but still pleasant. He continued to hold the empty mug for a while, reluctant to break the spell of the quiet moment. He felt a deep sense of contentment, a quiet satisfaction not born of achievement, but simply of being. The day had unfolded gently, marked by simple rituals, quiet work, and moments of connection with the natural world just outside his window. The mug, now cool, felt like a final quiet echo of the day's warmth and comfort. Finally, with a soft sigh, He placed the empty mug carefully on the small table beside his chair. He watched the stars for a few moments longer, feeling the vast stillness of the night outside mirrored by a growing stillness within himself. It was time for rest. He rose slowly from the chair, the gentle weight of peaceful fatigue settling comfortably upon him. Carrying the quiet echoes of the day within him, Arthur moved softly towards his bedroom, ready to surrender to the peace of sleep.